Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to the August 21st Corporate Development Committee meeting. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councilor Reed is he here yet? He's not here yet. Approval of the agenda, please, as intended. What have you done? Councilor Coleman, Councilor Goma. Any additions or anything? Councilor Ball.
If I could, through you, Mr. Chair, was wondering if we should move up Development Services report, which would be 9C1, just in order to deal with that quickly.
Do you have any objection to that, committee?
Mr. Report, what's the name, Mr. Chairman, C1?
9C1.
Well, perhaps we'll
Seeing none, then we'll move that up on the agenda to right after delegations. Noting that, any other adjustments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Declare pecuniary interest at the time, please, if there is one. First, we'd like to ask up under delegations, Jonathan Weaver, Crestwood Lake Trailer Park, year-round occupancy. Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Oh, different
If you
from
want to
that?
use that.
Sure.
TV working.
Should be 001, meeting presentation. There you go, right there.
And you just want to push down to go forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, speaking of TV, I don't know if everybody's aware that we're on YouTube too for these meetings now, I believe? Yes. So just confirming that.
No pressure.
Please proceed, sir.
Sure. So thank you for giving me some time this evening. I'm here to talk to you about Crestwood Lake Trailer Park and changing it to a proposed Crestwood Lake cabin community. So my understanding of the current situation is that the park has a number of people living there illegally. When I acquired it, first thing I did, well, when I proposed to acquire it, I did a Google search, and obviously it came up very ugly. And obviously it's not good for it's not for the municipality, it's not good for the current owner, and as the potential new owner, it's even worse for me. So I realize that this is a publicity nightmare for all concerned. I spoke with legal counsel for the municipality, and they indicated that there's an affordable housing issue in the county, and that I would have to talk to, obviously, council, this particular meeting, and municipal staff. I look at some improper travel units are obviously being used year-round, and that's not what they're built for. The economic viability of the park as it sits today is really in question, and if you've been there or driven by it, you can see that the revenue doesn't make sense. So there is a conditional offer that's been accepted. The new owner is ready to work with the municipality, that new owner being me, and I'm looking to bring the park to a standard that literally everybody wants. The people who live there, me as an operator, and you as a municipality. New management is looking to the municipality for help in creating a cabin community. I recognize that, when I tell people that I've bought, quote, a trailer park, a vision comes over their face as though, oh my God, are you crazy? And when I suggest to them, have you seen Tiny Houses on HGTV? And they go, oh yeah, I've seen that show. I love that show. And I said, well, let's recreate in your minds, what it could be rather than perhaps what it is today. What I'm really looking to do is build something that the municipality can be proud of, and obviously it's an opportunity for the municipality to increase its revenues. So proposed solution number one would be a 12-month cottage community. I've given you two examples of two, quote, trailers that don't look like trailers at all, because this is in fact what I envision being on the property on a go-forward basis as we phase in the new tenants. So we would attract park model units or cabins built to code versus travel trailers. We would attract park model units or cabins built to code versus travel trailers. We would serve a common affordable housing need in the community. We would look at the possibility of a multi-unit affordable housing option if the municipality was looking for one. Obviously, there's a tax revenue increase to the municipality, and we would upgrade the facility to a full wastewater treatment facility, mitigating risk to the municipality versus the septic system that's there today. Proposed solution number two would be a 12-month access with an 11-month occupancy. So in the previous option, they would become, in fact, legal residents. In this particular model, we again would have park model units or cabins versus travel trailers. We would eliminate the residency issue while making it relatively easy to accommodate unit owners. And I say that because, you know, being an 11-month occupancy, they would have to register their, one of the stipulations of being a renter would be that you have another residence, that you, if you have a driver's license, it's with another address. You're filling in your CRA from that same address. This would not be your home, although it may be your primary place of being, but you would have to be out of the park for 30 days minimum per year. This would be an affordable housing option for most, but not all, and it allows, and I say that because if we have 12-month access and 11-month occupancy, we can rotate which month some of the people would be, which month of the year they would be out. And of course, this makes it very easy for people who have other family members to spend time with them during that month. Obviously, there's again a tax revenue increase for the municipality. And again, of course, we would upgrade to a full wastewater treatment facility. Proposed solution three is an existing 11-month season with a hard close in February. I believe under and I apologize, I haven't updated the PowerPoint that much. I met with municipality staff the other day and they told me that when I Googled when I went to your website, I used Google, and unfortunately it took me to your old code rather than your new code. And so I have RT2 extended season. You already have this existing in your municipality. It eliminates the residency issue while it makes it possible to accommodate the unit owners. Park model, again, park model versus cabin, affordable housing solution for some but not all. Tax revenue increase, upgrade to a full wastewater facility. This is, in fact, now, I took RT2. I mean, when I look at your old guidelines you have, if you were building one from scratch, which apparently won't happen, but if you were building one from scratch, you have rules for that, and then you have, you know, RT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as exceptions that you've made. And so this is one existing exception already in the county with an 11-month open park closed in February of each year. So here are the questions of the municipality. Are you looking for an affordable housing solution or merely a solution to the situation at Crestwood Lake? Do you want a multi-unit affordable housing option on this property? Because we're willing to work with you to create one. Beyond the capacity to fund improvements necessary and the ability to remedy the known problems here, what is the municipality looking for from a proposed new ownership/management team? Because we really want to work with you. We look at this as a long-term partnership. How quickly can we resolve this together to bring compliance and time-sensitive improvements to the business and property? I mean, obviously, the sooner we can begin to do the phase-in, the sooner we're prepared to make the investments necessary to make the park what it should be and what it should have always been. That is basically the end of my presentation, other than I printed 10 of these things. I'll just hand you one and you can pass it around. And it's just an understanding. I guess what I came here tonight hoping, or at least perhaps seeking, was a conditional approval. And I spelled out the 12-month park, the 12-month access with an 11-month occupancy. I gave you my phone number and my email address in case you want to reach me outside this meeting. And the conditions I understand are already required, which would be a Ministry of Environment impact study. So, for example, that we understand that we can't affect water. Now, given that the lake is actually spring-fed and we draw from a well that's on the same spring, we recognize that we may have to have multiple wells, but we don't anticipate a problem with water. We would upgrade to a full water treatment plant, so we would actually be putting potable water back out. Now, we can actually put it back. The system has actually been used by other municipalities with similar concerns that you've had here. In fact, it's been to both trailer parks and, in fact, subdivisions that have had failures with septic systems. So the other municipalities in Ontario, the system we're looking at, and it is a scalable system. So the nice thing is we can put potable water either back into the lake or into our existing septic bed, and the difference, of course, is because the system uses filters and renders the organic material inert, it's literally putting potable water into the septic bed, so there is no MOE concerns on a go-forward basis, and it's in fact maintained by the third party that provides it. I've been told it's German technology, and in fact there are municipalities who wish they had wastewater treatment that was as good as this technology. While it's not free, it is incredibly effective. The second thing is we realize we have to make the park first responder friendly. We would do that by having a year-round, 24-hour-per-day manager on site to provide access. We look at a logical numbering process to make it easier to find units, and we would widen the access roads so emergency vehicles can get in and out easily. Third, park model only. Unless the municipality were to allow a cottage versus a, quote, trailer. I mean, if I look at your current bylaws, it requires that there be an axle and there's a specific type of park model that was there. If you would allow cottages, obviously it helps us with affordability issue, and if we're looking at a multiple unit, we would be looking at a low-cost construction versus a series of trailers. Our model is a single owner of the park with a land lease with a phased-in conversion. Our model is year one, net new 50 sites, converting some of the people from seasonal to year-round, and obviously some new unit owners. And so we're looking at about a 6-year time frame to convert the park over. And of course, we're open to any other conditions as set out by council. Thank you for allowing me to present. I'm willing to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Any questions, Mr. Weaver? Councilor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, through you to Mr. Weaver, a couple questions. Jonathan, the full, what do they use now for wastewater? They have a
septic system.
Not for each unit, though, I don't think.
No,
it's for their communal.
Right, they spent about $1 million about 5 years ago. It has five holding tanks. They pump to a central holding tank where the water is treated, and then it's pushed out to the septic beds.
Second question, you presented 3 options. In your opinion, what option do you think would be least disruptive to the people there now? And you used a word that wasn't in your presentation, that was phase in. I didn't see that there, so I'm glad you mentioned that. But of the 3 proposed solutions, which one do you see as least disruptive to the people that are there now?
Well, I guess it depends on which people you're talking about. We have, sadly, there were over 100 people. It was supposed to be 30 units that were 9 months, and they had over 100 living there illegally year-round. My understanding is they have removed a few. I've been talking to Margaret and Ken, and they've actually taken down a number of the eyesore trailers. But if you're asking who, if I look at the people who are living there illegally, least disruptive would be the 12-month park, because they're claiming resident status and would like to maintain that. If I look at the people who have perhaps been cottaging there for 25 years, my suggestion to you would be twofold. They may fear that any of the above would be problematic for them, and my suggestion is that given the age of some of those units and the viability of some of those units, they would have to upgrade those units anyways. And frankly, we're not looking to push people out. We're really looking at what is the economic viability of the 80 or so sites that are sitting vacant today, and the additional 150 sites. I mean, the park has 250 sites today. It's zoned for 400. So we look at, there would be little or no impact to anyone for the foreseeable future. I mean, I recognize that we may be living with a, quote, a cottager who's only there 6 months, and we're happy to accommodate them as a cottager for 6 months, or a year, for as many years as they would care to stay.
Last question. You've got a conditional offer now.
Correct.
Do you need us to make a decision tonight because your offer expires tomorrow, or do we have some time?
My offer does not expire tomorrow. I did not make the offer conditional on an approval from you because I think that would be an irresponsible decision on my part. As you may know, there was a tragedy in that family, and that's why they're selling the park. And so I've made the decision that the park goes one of two ways. I mean, it either becomes fantastic sooner if we're able to do one of those three options, or left, quote, as it is. The economics are, I don't know how soon someone wants to be camping for 6 months amongst a number of people who are living illegally, given, and I'm going to use a term that may not be popular, but a ramshackle view of what's there. Conversely, if we have a 12-month park or a 12-month access but an 11-month occupancy park, or even an 11-month park for that matter, we have the ability to move relatively rapidly because we could actually have full rental units, not unlike there are rental apartment buildings, there would be rental cottages. And so we could, dramatically improve the view, if I look at year one and if there was a subdivision-like looking cottage community, obviously more people are willing to be campers or renters in that facility in contrast to the way it looks today. And without the additional revenue of having a longer season, the economic viability of building 150 sites is, well, I don't know when it would happen. I mean, filling the 80 sites would be difficult, forget about the other 150. I hope that answers your question.
Councilor Pierce and Councilor Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate what you're trying to do here. My question is, you're saying that some of these units will need to be upgraded. Obviously, that's going to be at the cost of the owner of that unit, correct?
Well, there will be a monthly cost to them regardless. I think there will be rental, let's put it this way. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is, in my business model, just so you know a little bit about me, my previous life, my business partner sitting in the back, he and I built Canada's only self-directed RDSP, Registered Disability Savings Plan. And we looked at how do we make money in the investment world and help families that had challenges. And we look at this particular opportunity as a similar circumstance. We don't want to have a low-cost housing blight that people go, oh my God, don't go near that. What we are really looking at is a blended community. And what that means is that for not much more than they're currently paying for in some cases, what is a fire trap, and in some cases, what is actually costing them more to heat than it would cost to rent a proper, built-to-code park model, or if the council will allow a cottage, we could actually, as economically as they're living today, they could live in a safer, more attractive property.
Okay. I appreciate what you said there, but that doesn't really, the question I'm asking here is, okay, so I've got a trailer out there right now that
Correct.
needs upgrading.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to pay for that trailer to be upgraded in order to meet the specifications you're looking for, correct?
Well, it'll be the specifications of the municipality, and I would expect that the municipality is going to expect me to enforce code.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to have to either come up with X number of thousands of dollars to upgrade that, or
or,
happens, I'm
or a
out.
few dollars per month more than you're currently paying. But I would suggest that your current rent plus your current propane plus your current electricity may add up to more than your proposed rent in a two-code unit.
Okay, again, the direct question that I'm asking is, that's fine, but in order to get from A to B, there's got to be some sort of output from these people, right? So if I can't afford the initial even $1,000 to make the improvements I need in order to save that money over the long term, what happens to me? Are you going to put that money in there?
I'm suggesting that yes, the monthly payment they're paying today, the combined payment between their propane heating, their electric, and their rent to the park, those three numbers may well add up to exactly the same number of a rental unit in the park.
I don't think so.
So their monthly payment would not change. They would leave, their old trailer would be, in some cases, there is a market value. It's just not usable. It shouldn't be used as a year-round trailer.
Okay, so I think you've just answered it there. So it wouldn't be the same unit they would be in, they would move to a separate unit.
Correct. I'm suggesting that.
Got it.
Sorry, and I apologize for being
No.
confusing. Retrofitting is not a viable option.
Okay, there's what I was going for right there. That's the word I should have used, thank you. Because I'm thinking, if I've got to put out several $1,000s in order to bring that unit up to code before I can reap the benefits of these savings, I may not be able to afford to
Right.
do that, but they're going to be
So
moving over.
what we're suggesting is we've spoken to a couple manufacturers.
Okay.
And we could actually put a new unit in that meets the code and the guideline. And and that's why I asked if the municipality was looking for a multi-unit, we could actually build a multi-unit. It would be, constructed versus a trailer.
Right.
But we could actually build, for lack of a better term, a low-rise that could accommodate, I mean, if you truly want to address a low-cost housing issue, we're more than happy to have a discussion with the municipality to help you address that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for your email also. My question is, you've mentioned the word affordability many times in your presentation. Were you aware that an affordable housing complex does not allow second ownership of a house? Are you aware of that?
I'm sorry?
They're not allowed second ownership, another ownership of a house?
I
They can't have two dwellings, in other words? Affordable housing?
wasn't suggesting that someone would own multiple.
Well, you're saying about 11 months. Where do the people go for the 1 month then?
Well, they would be renting perhaps somewhere else.
So they go out, rent somewhere else. They wouldn't
Or
have
they would-
ownership.
No, they would not have
Okay,
ownership.
okay.
What I'm suggesting is they would, in fact, and I'll give you an example. So if you have a retired couple and they spend a month with their children a year, or they spend a month a year with a sibling, or
Okay.
they're on vacation in Florida or wherever they may be.
Okay, I'm just bringing up
Yeah,
the
I recognize
fact
that,
of
yeah.
affordable. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chambers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to the Mr. Weaver, a couple questions. Are you aware that council cannot give a conditional approval on a proposal that has to go through a planning application process?
Well, actually, council has the ability to change the master plan without the province, so I would think that they could give a conditional approval.
If council could give a conditional approval, what would be the purpose of going through the planning process?
We have to meet the conditions of the planning. But I'm going to suggest to you that if you ask me to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on studies, I meet all the criteria, and you say, but we don't want one, it makes it difficult to make the investment on a prayer. I mean, I'm just...
I understand the dilemma, and it happens often, but to be objective through the planning process has to be neutral in terms of hearing both sides and making a decision. So just that you're aware of that. And I believe that the three options that you're proposing would all require a zoning change, which would require application through the planning process?
Actually, the 11-month would not require a planning change. It would require a bylaw amendment.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is and you'll perhaps see the discussion in the staff response that we're going to be discussing later in terms of the report. But
I understand.
in terms of a conditional approval for a body that is the adjudicator of the planning application is very difficult. And I know it puts the applicant in a difficult position because there are expenditures required to go through the planning process, and I think we're aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Appreciate your presentation.
Again, thank you very much for having me.
Members of committee, we're going to move up now to 9C1, which addresses this. There was a report done by staff through, I believe, Mr. Trotter and Rashika Angrish. Please take a second and look at that report. It is a recommendation. Councillor Chambers, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to speak to the report in carrying on with what I previously said.
Please proceed.
And that's this. From my understanding, the recommendation is that, from staff, is to speak with the applicant and go forward with planning submissions to the planning put forward an application through the planning process. And as the delegation expressed, that is a very expensive proposition in terms of official plan amendments and zoning amendments, et cetera. Just the cost of the applications are expensive. And then add to that the studies that are required to make a complete application. And that's the dilemma that the delegation was presenting to us, in that it's quite possible that thousands of dollars can be spent and the planning application eventually, when the time comes, be not approved for one reason or another. And the application can be appealed for one reason or another. So there is some risk associated with going through the planning application, and that is why I think the delegation would like us to tip our hand, so to speak, in terms of whether we would be amenable to the conditions that he provided. And I'm not sure we can do that and remain objective through the planning process. And I would like perhaps staff to comment on that particular dilemma, on how the applicant going through a planning process can have some view of the end game in terms of cost and in terms of outcome.
Mr. Pomponi, could you give us a reply, please?
Sure. With planning applications, there are risks. The best you can do is try to gauge what the response is going to be and what planning support would be. But even if we met with a potential application, or for a potential application with an applicant or developer, all we can give them is planning departments or planning staff's position on it. And it's up to council to make those decisions. When I was consulting, I dealt with applications, as an example, where we met with municipalities. We tried to gauge what their positions would be on an application, and have spent a significant amount of money only to have them refused. If an potential applicant came in to talk to us, the first thing I'd be suggesting is, here's where our issues are, here's what our concerns are, here's what the history on this site has been. I worked on the original Planning Act applications for this site, as well as the one further down the road, which is Lion Shady Acres, and our position has been pretty clear on that. So there is some history of what staff's position would be on it. We'd also be recommending that they talk to a planning consultant and get their opinion. A consultant would meet with them and give them what they felt was their options and the likelihood that they think they'd get an approval on an application for any property in any municipalities. This is what consultants do. I'd say it's a couple of things they could do as well. I would suggest they talk to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, as well as staff at Ministry of Ministry of the Environment. The reason I suggest Ministry of Environment is that depending on the applications that we're dealing with here, there could be a responsibility agreement that could be required for the municipality to enter into. And I've said this before on previous applications where we've had communal systems, that even if there's nothing obligating council or a municipality to enter into a responsibility agreement. In one case that I was dealing with for a developer up in Puss Lynch, we were successful in getting 20 some odd units on a communal system. We're one of the very few ones. And everybody cites this application because it was successful. That same municipality recommended, went to the Ontario Municipal Board for another development. They were scheduling 2 weeks for a hearing. It was done in 2 days because the municipality said, we are not going to enter into a responsibility agreement. And without it, the communal system couldn't happen. So that's why I suggest the Ministry of the Environment needs to be consulted as well as Ministry of Municipal Affairs. So I'd be collecting up that information, and you have to take what you consider whether it's an appropriate shot or not. And then ultimately, it's council's decision. If council recommends one way or the other, that, as you have said earlier, that's appealable to the board, and that's not, that's out of the hands of the municipality and council.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Councillor Chambers, please.
Through you to Mr. Pomponi.
Mr. Pomponi, sorry.
Just a quick response. Would you recommend a council give conditional approvals prior to a proposal going through an application?
Absolutely not. You would be doing it sort of blinded. There isn't the information that's presented for you. There isn't an opportunity for residents to come in and people of other interest to come in and make their concerns known to you. That's the purpose of a public process. I'm not certain we can do it under the Planning Act, quite honestly. There is a due process, as you said.
But we certainly can encourage the applicant to go through the process.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. CAO Emerson has a comment.
Well, I think Mark answered. I was going to add on when you were finished the first time. I thought maybe Councillor Chambers' question was more, what is the role of the council? And it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a moral and process and maybe legal obligation of on the part of the council to remain objective and unfettered by decisions prior to hearing the applications, because there could be other sides to the application, and you need to be the objective body that hears them. And if you were to pass a resolution ahead of time giving support for this, I'm sure there are lawyers and people on the other side who could easily point out that you were not being objective and unfettered at that point. So would you concur with that, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Boma, please.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, I would agree. I'm not comfortable giving conditional approval on anything without all the information that we need before us. However, we are faced with this situation. I don't even know how many of these trailer parks we have in the county of Brant. You're very quickly 4, 5, 6, maybe more. And we're faced with the same issues in all of them. Number one, they are a significant source of low-income housing to the community. Number two, to my knowledge, I think all of them have residents living in them year-round. Maybe not. I stand to be corrected on that. And so we do have some significant challenges, and what I like about Mr. Weaver's proposal is that it's actually looking at a way of supplying low-income housing and doing it up to a standard that we can live with, which is why, without saying whether I would give approval or not. I like the idea of looking at an innovative way of dealing with this issue, which remains a problem because regardless, if we do nothing with these places, they're not up to code, they're being lived in year-round. I know there's one near where I live too in St. George, and it would be nice if the owners had an innovative approach to be able to bring these things up to code and be able to do that. Having said that, it does seem that a lot of the hoops that have to be jumped through may be too big, and yet the idea is, to me, is exciting because it allows us to move forward, clean up some of these sites, and bring them up to standard. So I would encourage Mr. Weaver to pursue, to proceed, and yet at the same time, yeah, again, I can't make any judgment about which way I would vote on a proposal coming forward, and yet I do really like and commend him for coming forward with an innovative approach to this problem that we all know about. That's my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Boma. Any other? Councillor Miller, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Pomponi, just to be clear, if it's a year-round occupancy, it has to go through planning application. If he goes for the 11-month occupancy, it doesn't have to go through planning. Is that correct?
No, it still needs a rezoning application.
Even at 11 months?
Yes. We have, the zoning bylaw says, it's very clear, I think it's 9 months. It spells out the date. I know it ends in October 31st. The one that was cited here was down the road at Lion Shady Acres.
Okay, thank you. And just, my comment then is, I want to commend Mr. Weaver for coming forward. We know it's a problem. I've been there enough times. I see the conditions they live in. And I can speak to the amount of money these guys are paying to heat the places of propane, because most of the ones I've talked to are 6 months in arrears, 8 months in arrears to their propane supplier. So they're not meant to currently be year-round. They can't heat them enough or well. And I concur with Councillor Boma. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because you don't want to put people through red tape if you don't have to, but at the same time, there's so many unanswered questions. Traffic would be one, and as Mr. Pomponi pointed out, the septic system would be another, because we would have to underwrite it if that's the appropriate term to use. So there's a lot of questions, unfortunately, that need to be answered, and I think, unfortunately, the only way to answer them is really through a planning application. So I would support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir. Members of committee, we're going to vote on 9C1, CD 1787. Could I move that first? Oh, sorry, recommendation. Councillor Boma, Councillor Coleman. Everybody's aware of the report requirements and the recommendation. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried. Again, thank you, Mr. Weaver, for coming and doing your presentation. We appreciate it, sir. Back to the agenda. Adoption of the minutes. Mayor Eddy, Councillor Miller. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from the minutes. Councillor Miller.
Quick question. On page 12 of our package, there was a recommendation that we carried, that we recommended, that we moved and passed the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Talked about a presentation on climate change, and I'm just asking you through the clerk if we've got a date set for that.
They're scheduled to come to the September CDC meeting.
Seeing none, we'll move forward to consent items. Item 7A1, there is a recommendation revision to tax collection policy. Councillor Pierce and Councillor Gatward, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 2, BMO parking lot lease. There is a recommendation from Ms. Dale. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Boma. Questions, concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Over the page to B. Items to be received, B1 through 4. Councillor Peers, Councillor Coleman. Anyone pulled or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee reports, there are none. Staff reports, corporate services, general manager's update, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just have one item I just wanted to bring up, and that is that there are 2 new trade agreements that have or are soon coming into effect that will have impacts on the county's purchasing policies. The Canadian Free Trade Agreement, the CFTA, came into effect on July 1st and replaces the Agreement on Internal Trade, also known as AIT. And the Canadian-European Union Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, will come into effect on September 1st. Both require the collection and reporting of procurement statistics, changes around the rules and procedures for bid postings, evaluation criteria, posting of contract award information, and vendor debriefing will come into effect. So a report will be coming down the road with more detailed information.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any questions? Thank you. Operations, there is 9B1, Paris Downtown Master Plan. There is a recommendation. Councillor Simons, any questions? I do have a question. Did we ever go to OMAFRA for the RED funding, Rural Economic Program, to see if we could get funding on that for this? I know the City of Midland recently received 50% funding for the program to have the study done.
Mr. Chair, not for this project we did. We put this project in the budget. I know we have made RED funding applications in the past and usually been turned down. I think because of our that metric that we often talk about during the budget of the county's basically the county's wealth indicator, that's its household wealth indicator, tends to bump us out of those grant applications.
Okay, so we didn't, on this one we didn't?
No, we did not, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. There is a recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 2, CD 1783, 2021 Ontario 55 Plus Winter Games bid. There is a recommendation. Councillor Coleman and Councillor Peers. Any questions, concerns? Councillor Miller, please.
I will support this recommendation if Russell Press guarantees that he'll still be an employee of the County of Brant in 2021.
Oh, we'll be talking about that. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 3, CD 1784, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Boma. Servicing plans. Any issues, concerns? None. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. General Manager's update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had updates through the last Public Works Committee and as earlier today at Community Services, so I've only got a few items left. One is which is I think of interest to all the members of council, the transit feasibility study, which we're working on. The project is on schedule. The public consultation has now ended for it, and so we'll be moving into the consultants working with staff will digest the information, and then we hope to have the initial report to council on schedule. We just chatted about, or there was just a report about servicing for Canesville, but one of the outstanding items from the boundary adjustment process is a new water agreement for Canesville, and I've been working with city staff on that one, and we do have a draft agreement, and I hope to have it in front of council hopefully next month. So that's another, I think, critical step along the kind of the tidying up list from the last round of boundary negotiations. And finally, I just wanted to maybe just make a quick comment. Within the last month, we had our Canada 150 event, which was last month, July 22nd, I believe, at the Brant Sports Complex. We had a very good turnout. We had a very good team effort to put that on. and I think we were all quite proud of the event when it was over. And I think the one thing I learned out of the event is that my department has basically got balloon blowing up down to a fine art. They can blow up 4,000 balloons in about 1 hour, so that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Great job by your team. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to General Manager Bradley, is GM Blue Plan, are they the same company looking at the servicing for across the road from the salt domes for our new detachment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. GM Blue Plan has done some conceptual work for us, probably it's well over a year ago, on the TCA lands, the proposed Brant 43 East Business Park. They're not doing any work for us currently, but they did some conceptual work, and that's allowed us to make a number of estimates and the business plan for the Brant 43 East Business Park. So they are the same company.
Okay. Who is doing that?
Mr. Chair, right now, nobody is doing any work. It would be, I mean, this was an in-camera discussion about the potential land acquisition in that area, so, but if we proceed with a detachment and we don't have an adjacent development, we'll likely be going out to market for a consultant to do a small-scale servicing plan for the OPP detachments. But there are some pieces that need to fall into place on that, in that area, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We've dealt with Development Services C1, we've dealt with already. General Manager's update, please.
Sure.
Mr. Pomponi?
Just two things. As you're aware, we had a summer student in working on our heritage project, which is inventory. Melissa Snodgrass, she did a really phenomenal job for us. And we just got news that the province is going to be funding her for 2 additional weeks in November to come back to finish up the project. So we're quite excited by that. And also, just let committee know, the development engineering positions that were approved in last year's budget, we are beginning interviewing next week. Hopefully we'll get somebody in here in the next couple of months. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Pomponi. Any questions? Thank you very much. Moving on to Economic Development Strategic Investment, there is a recommendation there. There was a presentation attached to the addendum. Councillor Wheat and Councillor Coleman. Questions or any concerns regarding the presentation? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed?
Councillor
Carried.
Cardy,
Yes.
I believe the students wanted to make that presentation, if committee will allow.
They want to give us our money's worth, do they? Sure, come on out. It's only a few pages, so we'll go through that. Thank you. It was well done, by the way. Thank you. Michael, could you introduce them, please? Could you introduce the students, please?
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of council. I'm pleased to introduce our 2 summer students, Brandon Webb and Caitlin Court, who have been helping our department out over the last 4 months. The contract's almost done at the end of August, and I just wanted to give them the opportunity to share with you guys the findings that they had throughout the business directory project. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Michael. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to members of council, myself, Brandon, and my partner, Caitlin, are here today to present to you our findings for the business directory project of the summer of 2017. So in 2014, the county's Economic Development Office implemented a comprehensive business directory. Each year, efforts are made to keep the business directory up to date. However, this year it was determined that the best way to improve the business directory and keep it up to date was to conduct interview-like question period with business owners in the county, and that was done through the month of June and July.
As the summer students, we went out to the local businesses and asked multiple questions to understand who they were and what they did as a business. While we were talking to the business owners, our secondary goal was to promote the Salute to Brant business event. And to do this, we handed out invitations and also explained what the event consisted of. One of the results of the business directory project was to compile additional information to provide for a more comprehensive directory. This gives the staff and citizens a better understanding of what the County of Brant businesses have to offer. However, one of the challenges faced was connecting with mobile businesses that did not have a storefront and also agricultural businesses because of the season and what hours they worked.
So as you can see from the graphs provided, the business directory project was a huge success, growing the business directory from its initial 625 in 2014 to 815, and that is where it currently stands. So while conducting the interviews with the business owners, certain conversational trends began to appear themselves. One of the major trends that we found was a sense of civic pride. Business owners here in the county often also live here in the county, work and play here in the County of Brant. And because of this, they have a tremendous amount of pride for where they live and doing business here. The next conversational trend that came up was the commitment to growth. Business owners in the county recognize that the County of Brant is in a period of exponential growth, and they're very excited about this opportunity, both personally as well as business owners, for the opportunity of their business's growth. And finally, the County of Brant and the businesses here within the County of Brant really foster that culture of synergistic working culture. So the businesses here in the county work together, they lean on each other to help prosper, help grow, as well as to help each other out.
When talking to the business owners about Salute to Brant business event, the business owners were very receptive and saw a benefit in attending the event to grow their business relationships. The result of this was growing excitement and promotion of the event in the community. This excitement resulted in an increase of both registrations and nominations to date. In the past, it has been hard to solicit responses from citizens and business owners. However, due to the in-person invitation and to the event, there has been an amazing response, generating more nominations and registrations. As you can see on the positive trend of our graph, we have currently 47 nominations, which is more than the last 4 years combined. Overall, the business directory report was very successful. The business owners were excited about the growing relationship between their business and the County of Brant.
In the future, we hope our findings can mutually benefit both local business owners as well as the County of Brant. Thank you very much for listening to us tonight, and we would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you to both of you for the fine work, and I have to say to committee, I know they did this work because I came in a couple of times a week to keep an eye on them, and I looked at their computers. They weren't playing Tetris or Candy Crusher, so they were doing the report. Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Chambers, then Councillor Simons, please, and then Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, just let me thank you for the work that you've done through the summer. I would assume by the quality of your report and the work you've done that you're both students of my old alma mater, University of Waterloo, is that correct? And
University of Guelph.
Well,
I understand nobody's perfect.
You won't hold that against them, I take it.
a job well done, no matter where you're enrolled in university.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenters, again, thank you so much for doing this. And on behalf of the Economic Development Committee, we thank you very much. This is very good knowledge to have. We were pretty sure that that's the way it was going, but we wanted to see it in graph and words before we comment for sure. So thank you again very much. It was really a worthwhile task.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Yes, thank you very much for this. It's nice to see it you know, in print so you can actually see the trending and stuff like that. My question is, it appears that we went from 625 businesses to 815. Now, is that 190 net new businesses, or is that 190 businesses that just were not in the directory?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Pierce. So this was the change in the change over those 3 or 4 years. So it would be a net change, be it businesses who either have opened up in the county, have relocated, or were not captured in the original business directory.
Okay, so all encompassing. Excellent, thank you. Mayor Eddy, please.
Well, thank you for your presentation and the information you've given. It's astounding that there are that many new businesses, and I don't think there are. I think there were a lot that were not known or had not been discovered or included previously. So it's good to have those and know those. Hopefully they've acknowledged, as you said, that they are in the county of Brant without having that address, and that's a sore point. I wondered in your travels if you found that business representatives acknowledged that that occasionally, often, or how often, they acknowledged that they got a cheaper tax rate by being in the county of Brant. Was that generally acknowledged or not acknowledged?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mayor Eddy, taxes were often not commented on during the business directory, aside from the sarcastic comments of the of seeing if we as students would be able to lower their taxes. Obviously, us being students, we wouldn't be able to. But to answer your question, no, there was, it wasn't a very, we did not get many comments regarding the tax rate in the county.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller, please.
That's unfortunate. Thank you, guys, for doubling the number of people in our economic development department over the summer. Caitlin, I missed what you said there. You're talking about businesses without a storefront. So were you guys accounting for that? Like, and I see that a lot. I see the home inspector or a designer or even web bloggers are out there. Were you guys looking at those guys, or how'd you contact? Tell me about that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miller. We did try to find them through phone number, and we did leave them voicemails, and if they were receptive to that, then we did add them, but unfortunately, if they did not answer, we did not get them into the report.
Follow-up question, if I could. If you're researching that, any ideas, if you could put a number on how many people would be out there? Like in my business, I deal a lot with people who work out of their homes. And anecdotally or through other economic evidence, do we know approximately how many people would be working out of their homes in the county, don't have a storefront, we don't know they're there, maybe they're doing taxes in their basement or something? If you had to put a number on it, would you be able to give you an educated guess on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Miller, I probably couldn't. There was a lot that we would see traveling on the road while we were traveling on the road, and we did capture their name of the business, and from then that's the only how we can capture that information. We're not allowed to go to houses without signs, so that's the only way we could figure that out.
Councillor Bowman.
It seems that everyone's taking a turn. Through you, if I could, take off your student hats for a second. I really appreciate the work that you've done. There's no substitute for face-to-face. And having talked to so many people and asking them what their thought, and individually if it's different, what's one piece of advice that you would give to this committee and to council about what we could do different or better to encourage growth and to encourage business? Because really, the business is the lifeblood of what we do here. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Boma, I believe I can speak for both Caitlin and myself that one of the things that we would say would be an effective two-way communication between the County of Brant and local business owners. The people who operate businesses here in the County of Brant, they love working here, they love living here. They're very happy with the way that the County of Brant operates. It would just be, if I may, it would be just something to say, I would just say communication. That would be the big thing.
Thank you.
Councillor Simons, please.
If I may, just one quick question, I forgot to ask this. The Salute to Brant, when you were out speaking with the business owners, were most business owners aware of the Salute to Brant event? And if so, were they positive in their thinking about coming?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Simons, I would say most of them did know about the Salute to Brant business event, but the ones that didn't were very excited, and we do have a lot more people showing up that have never shown up before or already registered.
Okay. And they are registering?
Yes,
Yes,
they are.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you again. Great job.
Thank you.
General Manager's update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to make one clarification or response, if I could, to Councillor Belma and to Mayor Eddy. One of the differences with those numbers that you see going up, you're absolutely correct, it's not necessarily new businesses, although some of them would be. It's a different approach and methodology to the business directory. So we've never had students or people go out one-on-one and visit each of the businesses, or as many as possible, one-on-one, and they were equipped with tablets and were able to update them in real time. So I think it was just the methodology that captured so many more, so that was what was accounting for that increase. Another thing that I did want to note, and Brandon and Caitlin have done an incredible job this summer. They do have quite a comprehensive report, good and bad comments. In fact, all the comments that were received from the businesses. So if any of you want to receive a full copy of the report, I'm happy to email it to you. This work that they did is going to form a formalized business retention and expansion program that I think has been probably lacking, and I would, like I said, really want to formalize that and concentrate heavily on that going into the fall and into 2018, and we have a great base to start with that now. In regards to updates, I just have one on BDAC, and some of you may know this, and I know a lot of you know Peter Krause, who is the chair of our BDAC committee. Unfortunately, Peter has formally resigned as chair of the committee. He's moved, as some of you may know, to Port Dover. This way, so, and he has a home-based business. He doesn't have a business or a home now in the county. So we're very sad to lose him, but we will be doing an election for a new chair and vice chair at the September meeting.
Any other? That's it. Councillor Simons.
Just one comment, please, may I? Could you send that comprehensive report also to the Economic Development Committee?
Certainly.
So they're aware of the full review. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Allison, for your report. Members of Committee 10A, Seconder, all in favor? Oh, you had a question? Oh, it's too late, buddy, sorry. What's your question, Councillor Pierce?
Thank you for allowing this, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
Thank you for showing up tonight. We appreciate it, too.
My question is, other than this letter, do we have any other proof of what has been stated in this letter is actually happening? Or do we only have this letter stating that?
At this time, I think we should, you're speaking about 10A?
Yeah.
I would suggest that we take this to the in-camera, because part of it is in-camera. So we should probably discuss that in-camera.
Okay.
Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
There is a report on this in the camera.
Yeah, it is in the in-camera report. Thank you. Motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Pierce, all in favor? 2 minutes, please.
We just skipped a whole bunch of things.
Did we?
Yes.
What?
Other business and CAO's update.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
Sorry for me to stop you.
as you can tell, I don't want to hear Paul's update, so sorry about that. There is no other business. Matters referred by council. CAO's update, please.
I was gonna ask the mayor something quick.
Hurry. You can if you'd like. Go ahead.
Well, okay, first of all, I'll give a little update on AMO, and I know there are a number of members of council over here, but a couple things that I'd like to bring to your attention. There was discussion at, AMO had done a survey and then a bunch of discussion. There was discussion about putting forward a proposal for municipalities to get 1% of the HST. And I apologize. 1% of the HST to help with our budgetary shortfalls. So the premier actually was on later that day or the next day, and she did say no, but I don't know how the process is going to unfold from there. But it was an interesting point. I think the point we all know is there's one taxpayer, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal. We're all in it together. And there's a suggestion that some of these dollars can be spent more effectively at the municipal level than they are at the provincial level. So it's an interesting point of discussion. There was a lot of discussion in some of the sessions I was in and at a plenary session about the OMB reform. And I think you've been following that to a certain extent, where there's going to be much more authority brought right here at this table. And things like the process, like the kind of thing we talked about with the delegation earlier, are becoming increasingly important as that goes forward. There'll be, once a local decision's made, if there's an appeal, I just got to share it out here, high level, there'll be mandatory case management. So the parties will have to sit down with a provincially appointed case manager to help them work their way through it, maybe find common ground, and evolving into mediation. So all that occurs before there is any hearing. And at any hearing, there's no examination, from what I heard, or cross-examination. Witnesses can come forward, experts and non-experts, and put their position forward. The hearing officer can ask questions, but there's not lawyers there grilling them and adding to the expense and so on and so forth. After that local tribunal makes, if they make a decision contrary to what the municipal decision is, it's back to the municipal council for further discussion. So it's going to be an interesting change. It's going to, if it goes through, it's going to put an awful lot more planning authority right back here at this table. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. We met with two ministers, as you know. We went with Eleanor McMahon, who's the Minister of Culture, Tourism and Rec. We met about potential funding for the Bucket Center Old Town Hall project. She was quite enthusiastic, quite supportive, familiar with the project. She gave us a staff member's name, senior staff member in her office to work directly with. She told us that we would be eligible for Trillium funding. I think there was some concern or confusion in that regard, but she said quite categorically that we would be. And she also suggested she'd be speaking to a couple of her cabinet colleagues and suggested we work with our federal members, not only Mr. McColman, but the other member to the north, Brian May. Yeah. So working on that. And we also met with Minister Morrow, Minister of Municipal Affairs, to try and ask him to hurry along the criteria that we will need his ministry to apply when we're moving into the second phase of our employment land strategy. So you know the first phase, which we've talked to you about, was basically an inventory of what's out there now. Second phase is more of the analytical phase. And coming out of that into the future, there's likely to be proposals to maybe shift some of the employment land designations from some land to another to get it into an area that's more viable going forward. And there's going to be provincial criteria put forward for that. We've been lobbying them to move it along to keep on our timelines, and they said they'll have it done by the end of the year, and we can work concurrently with them, and they seem very supportive in general of all of that, so. The other thing I was going to run over and ask His Worship, and I don't, you'll have to help me there, whether we were supposed to keep it in camera or not, Mr. Mayor, but that the mayor and I attended a facilitation with the provincial facilitator that was appointed by the minister with Six Nations and the city of Brantford and ourselves. They were just the heads of those three bodies and their CAOs. And I don't know whether we have to talk about that in camera or where we're at with that. Do you?
Mayor Eddy?
I'm wondering whether we should, basically at the facilitation, we just talked at a very high level about the kinds of things we could put on a list to talk about in subsequent meetings. But there's really nothing for public digestion now, I don't think. Is that right?
Any questions to our CAO? Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a comment to the one thing Paul was saying in regards to the whole 1% of the HST and stuff like that. It was also interesting the conversations that went on after that, in the sense that, okay, so let's say that this 1%, they're going to give the 1% back to the municipalities. It was quite a battle saying, well, you know, the little guy's not going to get any of that by the time the bigger municipalities are going to eat it all up. So it was interesting to see that, you know, on the one side of the coin, we want something back to help us out. And it was just a suggestion that was made about this 1% HST, and then all of a sudden, once that was out, then there was another battle saying that, oh, you know, well, it's all going to be the larger municipalities and us smaller ones aren't going to get anything out of it anyway. So it was quite an interesting debate, to say the least, once that came out. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to share one thing really quick, and then this is, I don't know if I'll ever forget this. And I know Michael Bradley talking about the red applications, how we're in decent economic shape. Municipality of Kenora, less than 15,000 people. And on the screen, I don't remember what session this was, they had the biggest bridge I've ever seen in the world up there. And they have $140 million in infrastructure spending that they got to come up with. So I thought I wanted to share that. And I know our CAO had a very interesting conversation with the mayor of the Kenora.
Yeah. He was from another northern community. We were sitting, well, they also said that Kenora has the highest property tax rate in the province. So we were sitting around talking prior to going into meeting one of the ministers, and I was reflecting that, you know, I've been thinking about that and thought, you know, there's a cost of living if you live in the north, where you have, especially Kenora, which is the largest geographic municipality by far in the province, and very small population. There were two gentlemen there, and the one guy said, I disagree with that, and he was the mayor of Ear Falls or something. I've got his card, I got to look it up. And he said, no, he said, we provide a service to the south. Like if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have mining and all the natural. So it's an interesting discussion, and I'm sure has really raged in the north over the years. There was one other thing I was going to add in, and I heard it from Councillor Pierce, so I'm going to steal your thunder, but it's a short thing. So John was saying that he was in a presentation, and the one lady was talking about roads and infrastructure and so on. She said, let me put this in context for you. A child born today, being born right now, will not drive a car on their own. That they'll be, within the 16-year time frame, we'll be dealing with, across the board, driverless vehicles. It was a sobering thought to me.
I doubt it, but. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, motion to go into camera. Councillor Coleman, Mayor Eddy, all in favor? Thank you. 2 minutes, please.